Called in to help mop things up after Brisbane was smashed by an extreme hailstorm described as a catastrophic event. Large hailstones propelled by winds of up to 140 kilometers an hour slammed into buildings and vehicles, leaving a trail of destruction.
And changes that can't be explained by men. Worldwide disasters that we're witnessing right now, I see as labor pains in nature, which are going to become more and more frequent and more intense the closer we get to the birth of the King.
A new sign of the severity of the Western drought. The artificial lake that supplies Las Vegas is at its lowest point ever, and officials have been forced to build another pipeline to draw water from the lake because the other two are starting to surface above the water line. Take a look at the so-called bathtub ring around Lake Mead. It's the biggest it's ever been. The lake was created by the Hoover Dam built in the early 1930s. The water comes from melted snow from the Rocky Mountains, but snowfalls have been smaller than average, and the lake is now 140 feet lower than it was when first created. That's the height of a 20-story building. Besides Las Vegas, the lake supplies water to parts of California and Arizona. I'm Matt Sampson, the Weather Channel.
And that rain caused problems on the east side of Kansas City. 23rd at 4:35 tonight. People were trapped in some nearby businesses for a time. One person had to be rescued by boat. A Kansas City, Missouri Fire Department battalion chief on the scene expressed his appreciation to Brian Busby and the First Alert Weather Team tonight.
Hey, Brian. I appreciate the help. That's what I needed to hear. There's so much water here now. If we get another downpour, I'm going to make these people come out. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Center with what some scientists think may be behind the heat and all of this dry weather that we're having.
Is really, really interesting. So scientists, climatologists are looking at something they call the blob. It's a huge area of warmer than normal water out in the Pacific Ocean, and Lisa Balick is digging deeper into the story.
Yeah, Kristen, the blob, as scientists call it, was first noticed 18 months ago. How it got there is still a mystery, but now it's getting a closer look from Oregon scientists after such a crazy weather stretch we've had in our area. It's not the blob from the 1958 movie by the same name. It's out here in the ocean, an enormous blob of unusually warm water, 1,000 miles in each direction from Alaska down to Mexico. And it could be causing the drought in Oregon, Washington, and California.
And it's now about the size of Alaska, so it's a very big patch. And it extends down through the top layer of the ocean, which is about 300 feet deep.
Phil Mote is head of the Oregon Climate Change Research Institute at OSU. He tells me the problem with the blob is that it's 5 degrees warmer than the rest of the ocean. Scientists believe air moving over the blob brings warmer air into the coast. That means warmer winter a drier spring and summer.
Last summer was record warm for Oregon. We're kicking off with another record warm summer. Last winter was the warmest ever in Western Oregon and Washington. The spring was quite dry. So we've had a sequence of unusual climate events since the blob appeared.
Scientists, including Mote, are now running hundreds of computer simulations to try and see if the blob truly affects the climate, or whether it's more the greenhouse gases, like auto emissions, that are causing this hot, dry pattern.
Through most of the winter, the Cascades had sort of a bathtub ring with just a little bit of snow at higher elevations and nothing at lower elevations. And we know that that was caused directly by the high temperatures. So the question is, how much of that high temperature was caused by the blob, how much was caused by higher greenhouse gases, and how much was, well, it's just one of those things.
Now, the Oregon Climate Change Research Institute is even recruiting volunteers to give up some of their personal computer space to help run the climate modeling simulations. If you'd like to participate,
Weather and dry conditions are just fueling wildfires across the Northwest. Take a look at this map. You can see there are 17 large fires actively burning across Oregon and Washington. Now, officials have told us it could be the worst year ever for wildfires. Chris Holmstrom has this update. Chris?
Yeah, Jenny, wildfire season came 3 weeks early this year, and as you mentioned, there are 17 active fires. They've burned more than 50,000 acres. Now, we're only talking about large fires at this point. This includes either 100 acres in timber or 300 acres in grass or brush. Currently, the largest fire is the Corner Creek Fire. It's in central Oregon. It's consumed more than 26,000 acres, and it's only 15% contained. Another large fire, the Niagara Fire near Detroit Lake, that one has burned 70 acres and is only 15% contained as well. Experts say this is about double the fires in the same time period in an average over the past 10 years, making for a busy season for firefighters.
Since we are starting so early this year, we are looking at the long-term fatigue and the long-term efforts of these fire crews. And we have safety officers in place looking at that, and we're trying to mitigate the effects of the heat-related illnesses.
Now, currently, there are about 2,500 firefighters across the region. This is Oregon and Washington battling those 17 wildfires. That number will most likely quadruple by the end of this month. Reporting live in downtown Portland, I'm Chris Holmstrom for KOIN 6 News.
Monitoring two potentially big weather events. First, a high surf advisory is in effect for all south-facing shores across the state. Surf could reach 10 feet tomorrow and remain high into Wednesday. There's also a storm system about 1,300 miles away from the Big Island that forecasters say has the potential to be the first named storm of the Central Pacific hurricane season. It's still too early to tell what might happen with this disturbance, but forecasters say now is the time to prepare. Brent Ramadna joins us with more. Brent?
Joe, I was told that this is the first system in the Pacific that has the potential of becoming a named storm. The National Weather Service says the developing storm is more than 1,300 miles away, but you should always be prepared and start getting emergency kits together now.
Now you get a condemnation notice on your place of living, and usually turns out to be something you're upset about. Not so much, not in this case, a condemnation notice rather is a cause for celebration here because a woman in Damascus has found that her apartment was loaded with bats. Our Horace Holmes now has been on this story for some time now, and he's got the very latest on the update there on what's happening in her apartment now. Horace, what's the story?
Well, it's good news, Leon. Felicia Hopkins is no longer stuck in that apartment that's been invaded by bats. After we brought the situation to light last week, Montgomery County moved in and they took action. When Felicia Hopkins first called 7 on Your Side, she and her 2 children were dodging bats. Over the past year, 5 bats had gotten into her Montgomery County apartment, and her building manager was slow, she claims, doing anything about it. The last bats made it through the vents over her son's bed just a few weeks ago. The animals tested positive for rabies, and the Hopkins decided to move in with friends until the situation was handled.
I don't like bats.
No?
I hate it.
After our story ran last week, the Montgomery County Department of Housing came in and condemned her apartment, and Animal Control posted signs warning the other tenants there are bats in the area. Hopkins was able to get out of her lease and move her family to a new apartment complex.
If it wasn't for you, we would have never made any progress as fast as we did. I mean, thank God that you were able to come out, because we'd probably still be living on someone's couch.
Now, Hopkins and her family are away from the bats, but the other tenants at her old apartment complex still have to keep an eye out. The building's back up to a wooded area, and the bats are still there. Reporting live in the newsroom, Horace Holmes, ABC 7.
You got 3 systems lined up. There's Linfa, then you got Typhoon Chanham, and then Typhoon Nangkod right behind that. The most formidable one, at least in the near term, that's going to be Typhoon Chanham. Right now, it is a 75 mile per hour a typhoon at this point. It's well to the north and west of Guam, so good news there, moving past that area, but it'll continue to move in that general sort of northwesterly direction and strengthen. So by the time we start to work our way in towards Thursday afternoon-ish, could be talking about 150 mile per hour a typhoon here for us, impacting parts of the very far southern Japanese islands. So that's something to watch out for, and then eventually working its way into China as we head towards the
Thick fog in Perth has caused dramas for domestic and international flights. It's the second day the runway has been blanketed, causing planes to be diverted.
8:30 a.m, Perth Domestic Airport veiled in a thick fog. This SkyWest plane disappears into the sky in just a couple of seconds. The fog caused massive delays at both airports today. At one stage, visibility was down to just 40 metres on the runway. An AirAsia flight from Kuala Lumpur to Perth was diverted to Bali because of the conditions. Passengers were stranded at Denpasar Airport for 7.5 hours. Dwayne and Fiona were 20 minutes out of Bali yesterday when their plane was turned around because of a volcanic ash cloud.
We thought, oh no.
The couple were meant to be tying the knot today in a Balinese ceremony in Ubud, but now their wedding plans are on hold.
Taking it in our stride and and hopefully get back over to Bali as soon as possible. So my parents are staying in our hotel at the moment, enjoying all the luxuries.
The foggy conditions started to clear by 9 a.m. The Bureau says it was caused by a combination of rain, light winds and clear skies. El Miteros, 9 News.
Here we go.
And El Miteros is at Perth Airport tonight, where flights are now operating smoothly. But El, we could be in for some more dramas tomorrow perhaps.
Well, good evening, Liam. Yes, that is the case. The foggy conditions that we've seen today and yesterday are expected to stick around tomorrow as well. Now, we have had rain, which means there's plenty of moisture in the air, teamed with the forecast clear skies that, as I said, are forecast for tomorrow. It's a perfect recipe for more foggy conditions to develop overnight and early tomorrow morning as well. Now, of course, if this is the case, which it is expected to be, there will be more delays and cancellations in and out of Perth, domestic and internationally as well. So if you are travelling tonight and early tomorrow morning, the best thing to do is to keep checking with your airline to see if your flight is running on time.
In trouble with climate change. The scientists have spoken.
It is a sign of tremendous change. It's a sign that life history patterns are actually changing pretty much before our eyes.